Hello. As you probably already know if you're watching this, Telegram recently added functionality for animated stickers. That said, it's a bit more complicated to create these stickers than a normal sticker or GIF. The post on Telegram's website is very lacking in instruction, and I've yet to find any English language tutorials for the process. So here I am. Before we begin though, I would like to preface this with the fact that I'm by no means an expert. I simply figured out a lot of this through trial and error. Still, a tutorial that's very basic is still better than no tutorial at all, so let's jump in. Firstly, you're going to need some software to attempt this. Adobe After Effects is required for the process. You'll also need a program with which you can export vectors. For the purposes of this video, I'll be using Adobe Illustrator, so there might be some slight differences if you're using another vector imaging program. Additionally, you'll need to download an extension for Adobe After Effects to export the sticker to a Telegram sticker file. Alright, so first we're going to need to download and install the Body Movin' for Telegram Stickers extension. I'll post a link in the description. You can also find the link on Telegram's website, though it's the same link that I'm going to be posting below. If you've never installed an extension for After Effects before, you should also download the ZXP installer first. Simply download it and install it, making sure that you don't have After Effects open during the process. Now you can download the extension. After downloading, simply open ZXP installer and drop the extension into the window. Now that that's installed, we can move on to the next step. You'll probably want to create your image in a vector illustration program rather than simply making shapes in After Effects. It's helpful to create your artboard here as 512 by 512, as that's the size limit for Telegram stickers. Remember, these are vectors, so resolution doesn't really make a difference here, as you can zoom in infinitely. Here I'm just going to make a ball with the ellipse tool and a shadow of sorts using the same tool. We're going to keep this simple for the first part of the tutorial. It is important to place the pieces of the picture that you want to be able to independently control on separate layers. Now we'll just save the AI file and then open up After Effects for the next part of the process. The first thing we want to make sure we do is allow the extension to run. We'll just click on Edit, then Preferences, then Scripting and Expressions. In the window, we want to make sure that the box next to Allow Scripts to Write Files and Access Network is checked. In After Effects, you'll want to create a new project. 3 seconds is the longest a sticker can be, but you can make it shorter than that if the animation is short. Now we can begin the animation process. Essentially what we'll be doing here is using keyframes to change the positions and orientations of the shapes we have created. If you're new to keyframing, don't worry, it's fairly simple once you get the hang of it. We can also use keyframes to change the paths of shapes, which is essential for more fluid animations, but not needed if you want to keep it simple. Let's begin by importing the AI file. We'll want to make sure we import it as Create Composition. We then get a few files in After Effects. We will be concerning ourselves with the Layers folder. Let's drag these layers to the timeline so we can begin. When we select the downward arrow on each layer, new options expand. First, Transform, and then beneath that we have all of our transformation options. Here we're mostly concerned with the anchor point, position, scale, and rotation. The anchor point is the location on the object that will be considered its center. This is important for rotation, as the location of the anchor point determines what point the object rotates around. Think of it as a brad on a paper doll. See those little stopwatches next to each transform control? That's how we'll access the keyframes. Clicking it places a keyframe at the location of the play cursor, or playhead. The data is now locked on that frame. If we move forward some frames and change the data, for example by moving the location of the object, and create a new keyframe, the object will slide between those two places over the time between the two keyframes. This is, for the most part, how we'll be creating animations. So from here, we can see that when we do move the shape, it creates a line. This line is a motion path. It basically shows us the path that the object is going to move upon between the two keyframes. It works very similar to a path that you'd make in Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator. There are curves you can adjust, and we'll get into that a little later. So here we're just going to be moving these keyframes after moving the object to make sure that it's playing how we want it to. Now you can also adjust the scale using the same method, which in this case gives us an effect of maybe the ball is moving forward and then coming closer to us. And again, this isn't a specific animation, we're just messing around with the different ways we can manipulate this image to get a good base understanding of how keyframes and motion paths work. Here again, you can see if you move the object to a position that is not a straight line from where it was, you can see the curve of the motion path. If we do this here, you can see that you can adjust the curve, again just like using the pen tool in other Adobe products, and that just makes the curve slightly different. Now we get this kind of weird effect of it moving. So let's say we want it to just be a bouncing ball. So we won't concern ourselves with anything other than having a straight line in that case. Alright, at that point we could export it as this, but I do want to show you one other thing first. In any case, before we do export it, we have to remove those Adobe Illustrator files. They're considered images and they will prevent us from exporting the sticker. So we will select both of them, and right click one, go to create, and create shapes from vector layers. This creates two new layers that are vector, they're just shapes, and we want to delete the other layers. Now we just have the shapes, but they've retained all of the keyframe and manipulation data. Additionally, now that they're shapes, we gain some different path editing abilities. The path is the outline of the shape, and we can adjust that using keyframes as well, making the shape different over time. This is good for keeping things connected in layers when you want them to, or for having them change their shape if you want to do a more fluid animation. Another useful feature here are the little arrows with a circle in the center. Those allow us to go exactly to keyframes. Right is to go to the next keyframe, left to the previous keyframe. The middle circle creates a new keyframe wherever our play cursor is. Alright, now we have the ball doing some kind of weird transformation here. Again, this is just to get us familiar with the different kinds of things we can do. Alright, so let's assume this is exactly how we want it. Everything's good. Now we can move on to exporting it. So we'll go to Extensions, Body Movement for Telegram, and that'll bring up this little window. We select Composition 1, and we save where we're going to save it. We click Render, finishes pretty fast, and done. We've now saved the sticker file, and we can import it to Telegram. So following the instructions that Telegram provides, we'll open the sticker bot, and we'll choose New Animated to create a pack of animated stickers. Then we name the pack. I'm just going to name it Test Shape. Now we will send the sticker to the Telegram sticker bot. So there's the sticker. We can see a little preview of it. Looks good. So we send it. It asks us to choose an emoji. Sorry, I had to cut that little part out. Glitched. Alright, congratulations. It's ready. We just have to publish it. So we can click Publish. And then we choose the stickers we want in it, which was the test shape, that file that we saved. We give it a name for the sticker pack. And there we go. We've imported it into Telegram. Beautiful. And there it is. Alright. Moving on. Here's a vector image that I created for this very simple human body. As you can see, we have different layers, body, hand, forearm, and arm. Again, you need a layer for each of the parts of the image that you want to move independently from each other. So we'll open up After Effects, new composition just like before, same settings. Then we will import that Adobe Illustrator file. Put each of the layers onto the timeline. And again, make sure that we are on the composition and not the file that we imported. make sure everything's on the right layer. So let's say here is where we want to begin our animation. Leave just a little bit of time before we start the animation. We'll go to transform. We're going to make this character wave. So again, first things first is we need to update the anchor points. Again, this is the axis upon which the shape will rotate. So we'll do that for each piece of the arm and then the hand. All right. And then when you change the anchor point, it will move your object, your shape, because the center has changed. So we'll have to put everything back real quick. Not difficult. Again, we want to make sure that there's enough overlap that when they move, it's not too... that when they move, it still looks like they're connected. All right. So we want to move the arm up so that you can wave. So we will make a keyframe beginning for rotation, and then a new keyframe where we want it to rotate to, how many degrees we want it to rotate. All right. So then we will do the same with the forearm. But we will also need to keep in mind before that we want to make sure that the position is correct, because when we move the end of the arm, the place where the forearm connects needs to move as well, so they need to move together. So we'll match that up, then we can add a little rotation so that the forearm is moving in a natural way. And we'll want to do the same with the hand. Make sure that it goes to the correct position by the end of this first part of the animation, and also that it is rotated correctly. I did that in reverse order. You can do it in either order. As we move along, you'll see we really needed more of a curve. You can do this manually as you scroll along the timeline, as I did here. You can also add a curve on the line. And again, that's very similar to the way you would use a pen tool in other Adobe programs. So we see we have it kind of matching up what we want. Now we're going to work on the hand waving while the arm is up. It's important while we're doing this to play it back to see that everything's working correctly. We don't want to assume that it's going to work like we want it to. Sometimes things will move a little unnaturally. We want to correct that if we can. I'm not spending a lot of time making sure everything's perfect, because this is just an example, but I want it to look okay. Alright, so now what we're doing is we finished adding the hand wave. We want to move the arm back down to the same position it was in at the beginning of the animation. That way it will loop. So we move it down, move the forearm to match. You can copy and paste the keyframes from the previous animation in reverse if you want to make it a little easier. You may still have to adjust things, especially depending on if the animation is faster on the way back down. So here you can see I'm moving the hand, but this time I created a little curve there just by pulling it in the middle of those two keyframes. And there we go, a little waving animation. So again, I'm by no means an expert, either when it comes to vectors or manipulating shapes in Adobe Premiere Pro, but this is a very good basic place to start. If you want to learn more about how to use keyframes and shape animation, there are plenty of tutorials that focus specifically on that, and I recommend that you check those out. I would add one more thing though. You may be tempted to use gradients in Adobe Illustrator. I tried that. The thing is, when you convert the Adobe Illustrator file to a shape, it loses the gradient data and in fact makes most of the shapes gray, completely flat gray. You may be able to add those gradients back in Premiere Pro, but definitely don't start with them because you'll lose all the work that you did in Illustrator. Well, a lot of the work that you did in Illustrator. And again, that may just be because I have no idea how to do that, but it seems like from what I've read, it will always lose the gradient when you import it. Alright, I hope that was helpful, at least a little bit. Maybe give you a good idea on how to start, and from there, go crazy, I guess. And if you do have any questions, leave them in the comments. I don't know if I'll be able to answer them, but maybe someone else will. I'll try if I can. So anyhow, have fun making animated stickers, guys. Cheers.